This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Starting the show is Todd Barrows, Kansas Farm Service Agency Chief Program Specialist, with reminders on upcoming deadlines and eligibility for the Livestock Forage Program. K-State Cow-Calf Specialist Jason Warner keeps today's show rolling with a review on what cattle producers need to keep in mind when it comes to cattle management this time of year. The show winds down with K-State's Brad White, Dustin Pendell, Phillip Lancaster, Bob Larson, and Dan Moser with another segment from the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast. The hosts answer rapid-fire questions on how to be a successful professional in the beef cattle industry. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show with an update from the Kansas Farm Service Agency. And this week we're joined by Chief Program Specialist at Kansas Farm Service Agency, Todd Barrows. Todd, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shelby, for having us come over. I just have a variety of topics that I wanted to discuss with the different listeners today and catch everybody up to speed on. But at the forefront of that, several topics that came to mind since we are in the spring and summer months are severe storms and crop damage that we're hearing across the state and different pockets in the areas. And with that, we want to make sure our producers are well informed of what they need to be thinking about or aware of when they are facing a crop loss due to a weather event.
And talking about those weather events, a lot of people across Kansas have seen some hail or tornadoes or just other severe weather. And what could they maybe be doing if they've suffered some crop loss to that?
You know, it's very unfortunate. We don't wish anyone to have any type of loss due to weather events. But when producers do have crop loss, and it seems like Kansas in the spring and summer, we do have that severe weather. And so we wanted to just catch them up to speed on what they need to be considering. And a couple of those variables are you need to decide whether or not if you're going to destroy that crop and replant to some other crop or a subsequent crop, or will you leave what is left and carry that through to harvest as intended. If you choose to destroy the crop and not carry the initial planted crop to harvest, then you need to contact your crop insurance agent, of course, if you have crop insurance. But also think about it, it would be a good idea to report that loss of crop to FSA and your local service center for planting history preservation. This is required to be done within 15 days of the weather occurrence and absolutely must be done before the disposition of the crop acreage. One exception that exists if the damaged crop is a fruit or vegetable crop, which we're getting more and more of those fruit and vegetable producers across our state, they need to remember, since those are highly perishable crops, they do have a shortened window to notify FSA. That's 72 hours by phone or fax or email. And then if you are going to carry those crops to harvest as intended, then you have 15 days from the normal established harvest date for the crop to document any type of crop loss due to a weather-related event.
And when we're talking about documenting this potential crop loss, what documentation needs to take place?
Basically, you're just telling the FSA, you're reporting to FSA, you know, the date of the weather event, what was the cause of the weather event, and then also as far as what your intentions are, if you're going to take it to harvest, if you're going to replant a crop, what was some of your cropping practices leading up to planting? What type of tillage methods and stuff? Just general information.
And on the flip side of worrying about the impact of severe weather and maybe a little bit too much moisture in some areas of Kansas, also wanting to keep a close eye on the impacts of the U.S. Drought Monitor and drought in Kansas.
As a whole, thankfully, we are looking better than in the past years at our state. But unfortunately, we are still seeing some drought conditions across more of the southern and central part of the state and some pocket areas. I looked this morning on the U.S. Drought Monitor, and we're currently showing 19 counties in Kansas that are now qualified and eligible for some sort of Livestock Forage Program benefit. And again, the Livestock Forage Program is for drought assistance on our normal grazing rangelands. Those counties include Barber, Comanche, Finney, Ford, Harper, Harvey, Hodgman, Kearney, Kingman, Kiowa, McPherson, Ness, Pawnee, Pratt, Reno, Rice, Rush, Stafford, and Sumner counties. And also, if you didn't catch that, just remember that you can always reach out to the local service center, and they can tell you whether or not you're eligible or not. And along with those same lines and thinking about that, our drought assistance, we also would like to update listeners on the clarification of policy with the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, or ELAP, for feed hauling. This was a popular program in the past couple years. But we wanted to put out some clarification that was released from the National Office for the 2024 program year regarding feed hauling. In the future will only be approved up to the feed need requirements to supplement those livestock owned by the producer that would be on grazing acres if available. Producers who sell hay to livestock producers or purchase hay for resale to livestock producers will no longer be eligible to apply for benefits. And livestock owners will have to provide the kind, type, and weight range of livestock that would be grazing those acres to determine feed needs, plus the number of truckloads of livestock feed hauled, mileage per truckload above normal, and tons or pounds of feed hauled per truckload.
Going back to the U.S. Drought Monitor, what are the qualifications for counties for the Livestock Forage Program?
So it's a D2 for 8 consecutive weeks during the grazing season, or if they hit a D3 or more severe drought anytime during the grazing season.
What are some other reminders that producers should be updated on from the FSA?
Most of our offices right now are picking up work activity with reporting of spring planted crop acreage. While the deadline to plant to report your planted acres is not until July the 15th, obviously, the earlier you make that appointment to report those crops guarantees the office will have adequate time to process your reports. Things to remember, not only when reporting your planted acres, not only the acres, but you'll also be asked what the crop type is of the crop that you planted, what the intended use is. In other words, what's your intent harvesting method, whether that's mechanical, whether that's for grain, forage, or for grazing, cropping practice, whether it's dryland or irrigated, of course, the crop production shares, and then the planting date. And I also want to tag on to that a reminder that if you are a hemp producer in Kansas, you have till July the 31st to report your hemp acres or hemp planted acres. And, of course, with that program, you'll also need to disclose and report your state grower license number for the hemp crop. And finally, a couple of other reminders I wanted to just let you producers be aware of. FSA is currently enrolling acres under the Grassland CRP program. If you haven't heard that announcement, this was announced this past week, and it runs through June 28th, so it's kind of a shortened window there for sign-up. And if you're not familiar with the Grassland CRP program, it's a working lands program, meaning it's designed to enhance the sustainability of the grazing lands while keeping the land still in production. And finally, last of all, if you're looking at a financing for a farming venture, be sure to reach out to your local FSA Farm Loan Program office, see what or if any support programs are available that could assist you with not only operating loans but also purchasing loans.
Is there also a change that's taken place when it comes to the non-insured assistance program? Yeah,
that is a good reminder, and I thank you for bringing that up. I should have remembered that earlier. But with FSA has enhanced their non-insured assistance program, or what we commonly refer to it as a NAP program, whereas if for our traditionally underserved producers, these producers will automatically qualify for basic NAP coverage based on the reporting of the NAP-eligible crops. Generally, in our area, are fruit and nut trees, as well as your spring planted vegetable crops and livestock forage crops. So again, if you suffer a weather-related crop loss on one of these crops, make sure to contact your local service center, FSA office, in order to secure benefits you may be entitled to.
And as always, wanting to put the reminder out of where they can always find more information about programs at the FSA.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can always reach out online through Farmers.gov, or you can also go in and contact your local service center and those offices, and they can tell you more detailed information that would be applicable to your specific issues.
Todd, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information from the Farm Service Agency.
Thank you, Shelby, for letting us stop by.
That was Chief Program Specialist with the Kansas Farm Service Agency, Todd Barrows. As always, you can find out more information about FSA by going to your local service center or by going online to Farmers.gov. Before we cut to a break, we're going to be joined by Rod Bain and Todd Van Hoos as they talk about USDA programs and educational outreach that play a vital part in the success of beginning and young farmers and ranchers.
How important are USDA programs and initiatives in the context of creating successful opportunities for beginning and young farmers and ranchers to enter the business? Todd Van Hoos of Farm Credit believes it is essential.
Because they've got programs that even the Farm Credit System as a co-op owned by its customers really needs to rely on. The guaranteed loan program, some of the down payment assistance programs, those are absolutely critical.
He adds the success of these programs have led to the farm credit industry advocating for more offerings via legislation. In addition, educational outreach to beginning farmers and ranchers, particularly in the financial realm, can also improve success. Regardless of outreach via USDA development programs or private entities like Farm Credit.
How do you put together a balance sheet? How do you put together an income statement? How do you manage those moving forward? A lot of that education outreach, that pays tremendous dividends.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about cattle management. And to talk about it, we're joined by K-State Cow-Calf Extension Specialist Jason Warner. Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Shelby. Appreciate it. Good to visit with you as always.
Jason, wanting to start off today's conversation talking about cows and what spring calving cow herds want to keep in mind this time of year.
Well, I think here at the start of the summer, it's always just a good time for folks to be thinking about a few key things with cow herds going into this time of year. And really, I think for folks that are more focused on spring calving cow herds, it's really, I think, a matter of now, just really managing and watching where we are from a body condition score standpoint, as a lot of folks are either going right into the breeding season or maybe they've already been in the breeding season. And so really, I think just strategically managing and understanding where those cows are from a plain nutrition standpoint is going to be really key as we kind of work through the breeding season here, of course, because we know that that's really critical when we think about reproductive success in a set of cows. But also, too, I think for spring calving cow herds, it's always a good time and it's never too early to really be thinking about what we might have to do in the event that precipitation is less than what we would expect or our forage production is going to be less than what we would expect and anticipate, especially later on into the summer. And so if that means maybe we have to do some supplemental feeding maybe a little bit earlier throughout the summer, or potentially be making some management decisions with regards to early calf weaning and management there, it's always a good time now in early summer to be thinking about those things that we might have to do later on in the later summer, depending on what conditions will dictate for us. So, I think a lot of folks around the state here so far over the last month and a half, we've been blessed with a good amount of moisture in some areas. But we also know that we've got some other areas around the state that we're still working with some pretty severe drought conditions, and precipitation has been less than expected, and we haven't had the forage production there to start the season off that we would like to see. So certainly a myriad of conditions across the state, and so as a result, we just want folks to be proactively thinking about how they might manage some of those situations rather than being reactive.
What about for those people who are managing fall calving cow herds?
For some cow herds, we're already now into that last trimester, and so we know that nutrition during that last trimester on those cows is really important when we think about not only from a calf health and management standpoint once those calves are on the ground, but their ability to cycle back in a timely manner and get a high percentage of those females pregnant at the start of the breeding season. And so now all of a sudden we're in that time of the year where we really want to closely evaluate where those cows are from a condition score standpoint. For most producers, if they've weaned their fall calving cows here in the spring, late winter or early spring, and if those cows go to grass early summer this time of year with good forage production, it's usually pretty easy for those cows to regain weight and body condition score that maybe they've taken off going through the winter time period. And with good quality forage this time of year, those cows are usually in good body condition going into the calving season later on, which is a really nice aspect of that management system. But we really want to watch that, and so much of that is just herd dependent and management dependent and dependent on what our forage resources and quality is, of course. And so just be really thinking about that, and we need to be taking some steps to supplement or provide some additional energy to those females going into late gestation. Now's the time to be doing that, because the last 60 to 90 days prior to calving is that time period where if we're in the event where we need to add some weight and body condition to those cows, now's the time to do it, because it's a whole lot harder to do that later on after calving.
What do we want to think about then when it comes to calves and not just weaning for those spring calving cow herds?
Well, I think for folks that are going to be weaning calves here later on in later stages of the summer, first part of the fall, now is just a great time to be getting with your veterinarian, working through your herd health management plan, your protocol with those calves. Just sit down and take the time to work through that. That way that you know exactly what you're maybe going to use from an animal health and from a vaccine standpoint. Just developing that plan with your veterinarian, having that lined out well in advance prior to when you're going to wean. That's really important. At the same time, too, for fall calving cow herds, again, having that conversation with your veterinarian about what your calving management protocol is going to look like on that particular set of cows, because maybe that's changed, or there might be reasons where you might want to change that. But again, that's a great opportunity to have that annual conversation. Always get a lot of questions from folks on creep feeding this time of year. Of course, with spring calving cows, if that's part of your program, just make sure that you understand the cost of that creep feeding program. Make sure that you're taking the time to work through what's your cost of gain for adding that additional weight based on what your creep feed program is relative to the value of gain that you're going to expect to put on those calves. And so just work through that, work with your provider well to have them help you determine that, and just make sure you understand if you're going to creep feed those calves, what's your general goal or reason for doing so. Is it simply just to add weight to those calves prior to weaning? Is it to make that weaning process a little bit easier? But again, just making sure you understand what the cost of gain is relative to the value of gain, so you can make a good, wise economic decision as to whether or not that's a good fit for you. So it's a good thing to be thinking about.
And one component we haven't talked about, but is crucial to cow-calf herds, is there anything you want to be thinking about for bulls?
Absolutely. I think for bulls this time of year here for these spring calving cow herds in situations where we've got pastures with multiple bulls and with groups of cows, just making sure that we're really watching those bulls closely, making sure that they're doing a good job of adequately covering those cows, that they're staying active and that they're actively breeding those cows. Really want to be closely evaluating them, particularly younger bulls, for injury, and just make sure that if you see any signs, if you've got a bull that's injured, making sure that you're taking prompt action there so that you can get a replacement bull if needed, or get that bull treated and taken care of. Just making sure that you're really closely evaluating those things. Always at the same time, too, it's a good time to be just thinking about, okay, if you pull bulls with the idea of controlling the length of your breeding and your calving seasons, just making sure that you get those dates on the calendar. That's always a good thing to do. That way you're working towards them and you don't miss that. And so just having that date on the calendar, that way you can look forward to it and make sure that you approach that correctly and get that done in a timely manner. That's always good to do. Again, too, if you've got any bulls that you're going to be starting maybe an early breeding season for some fall calving females, making sure that you get your breeding soundness examinations done and getting those scheduled. So just lots of good practical things there, absolutely.
As we're thinking about our cattle and making sure their nutritional needs are getting met, why is this time of year something that producers might want to go survey and see what they have out and about?
Well, I think this time of year, it's always really good for folks to be taking the approach of looking back from what we have left over from a feed inventory standpoint, and then taking a look at what we've got left over coming out of the spring and winter feeding seasons. We're getting to that time of year where folks are busy getting cows to grass, fence projects, taking care of invasive species, hay in, all that stuff, getting spraying and everything done. But it's always good to be going back and looking at, okay, what do we have from a hay inventory standpoint? How many bales do we have sitting back in the stack yard? How many tons of silage do we have left over from this last winter feeding period? So that way, as we go to making some decisions on harvesting and getting new crop forages and silages put up later on this summer, knowing what we've got from an inventory standpoint is really key and just helping us understand what our balance is. So making sure that we've got a good, accurate inventory on bales that we've got stored anywhere throughout our operation, but then also, too, on silages, make sure if we've got silages in a bag, make sure we're calculating out and at least measuring how many total feet that we've got within that bag left, so then we can determine how many tons that we've got approximately within that bag. And at the same time, too, for folks that have got silage left over, either in a pit or in a bunker situation, just doing some simple calculations and measuring the length, the height, and the width of those silage piles, because then we can back calculate how many tons we think that we might have sitting there. That's always a good thing to do. At the same time, too, on those silage crops, for folks that if they're not going to be feeding anything throughout the rest of the summer, maybe not doing anything with them until August or September, taking the time to make sure we've got those covered and closed up is really good, and that they're not exposed for spoilage and loss throughout the rest of the summer. So those are just some good fundamental things here at the start of the summer that are important to be thinking about.
Are there some upcoming events where if people want to learn more about this, they could do that?
You bet, absolutely. We've got some programs coming up here later on this summer. The Cattle U program is going to be Tuesday, June 25th here in Manhattan at the Hilton Garden Inn. And so there's more information available on that program at cattleu.net, as well as on ksubeef.org, our extension beef website here at Kansas State. So that program is still open. Folks can still register for that program. We do ask that you register in advance, but again, no cost with that program. And so that'll be just a really nice one-day program with a myriad of topics focused on practical aspects of beef cattle production. And so we're really excited about that program, and I think that'll be a really nice event with good practical information for folks there. And then also, too, just want to make folks aware that we have the dates out for our annual Kansas Livestock Association and Kansas State University Ranch Management Field Days, and we'll have two this year. Those will be August 15th in Wabaunsee County, and for folks out west, August 22nd in Gove County. And so there'll be more information that'll be available later on this summer as those are put together, but those are the dates, so folks can get those on the calendar. And again, just a great opportunity for folks to get together, network, and just good practical educational events that we encourage folks to be able to attend.
Jason, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Shelby, great to visit as always. Thank you.
That was K-State Cow-Calf Extension Specialist Jason Warner. I will link the events in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
You're tuned into Agriculture Today. I'm Jacob Cloughton for Shelby Varner, and we end today's show with Brad White, Dustin Pendell, Phillip Lancaster, Bob Larson, and Dan Moser from Kansas State University.
Our topic today, and we'll do these kind of rapid fire as we go through, and I've got topics centered on kind of early career and some of the things associated with that. Give me some advice for students as they go through college. So they're already in college, they're going through, and they want to get a successful ag career. Give me a couple pieces of advice for them.
Oh, I think one is to get as much practical experience as you can. That whether you come from a production ag background or from no background whatsoever, there's a place for you in the industry and a lucrative career for you. But it really helps to get some practical experience in the form of a part-time job while you're on campus, a summer internship. I think those kinds of experiences are really important. every place does it a little bit different, and someday you'll work for someone who will show you exactly how they want it done, which may not be exactly how you learned it in class or wherever you worked before. But just becoming familiar with the business, with the jargon, with the sort of the way people approach each of these businesses. Each has its own culture, and I think the only way to really soak that up is to be a part of it.
Phillip, I wanted to ask you, what about somebody that doesn't have a lot of background in ag but wants to start a career in ag, whether they're in college or coming into college?
Well, I think it goes a little bit along with what Dan was saying, is you've got to get some practical experience so you know what kind of how the business works, how the industry works, understanding, and probably one thing not being in the industry growing up is going to be networking. It's going to be big and important for you, is making connections with people in the industry so you can find those opportunities to get an internship or to be part of a business that works in ag and get that practical experience.
Absolutely. I think that's a great opportunity. So networking, doing some things like an internship. Dustin, I'm going to turn to you and ask, early career, so somebody that's just starting out in their career, what are some of the things that they should be looking at doing that's maybe a little bit different?
Well, that's a great question. Somebody who graduates, starting their job, they're probably going to be, they've just graduated college, taking all that, what they've learned, but learning on the job, which might be a lot different than what sitting in a classroom. They're just going to be a sponge. I think you're just going to have to try lots of things, listen, talk to lots of people. And keyword there is just listen. Listen to everybody as they're giving you advice or suggestions. Just be willing to try different things and go out and explore things, I guess.
Bob, Dustin got early career, and for no particular reason, I'm going to ask you about mid or late career. So mid or late career?
I don't know what you're looking at. So I think one of the things, and what I heard some of the other guys talking about was you're going to need to learn. You may have some book knowledge, you may have some background knowledge, but agriculture is a complex system, and beef cattle production within agriculture is a complex system, so you're going to need to keep learning. I think people mid to late career need to remind themselves that I worry about, for myself and maybe some of my peers, becoming better and better at the type of veterinarian I should, from 20 years ago. Because I'm gaining the experiences, but am I keeping up with some of the things that have changed? The economics have changed, costs have changed, some technologies have changed. Am I keeping up? So I think once you're mid to late, you need to still be wanting to learn. So everything you guys had advice for a person entering career, yes, I like having some experience, but I better be learning or I'm going to not be as valuable as I could be.
Dan had a quote before we got on the air that I think it bears repeating and ties right into your comments. And he said, for things to be better, there's going to have to be differences and change. Right? So if I want improvement, there's going to be differences, which is not always how I think about it.
I want to get better without changing.
I want to get better without changing. Absolutely. I want things to remain exactly the same except be better and have me do nothing different. Yeah. So as you progress through, and many of you are already in your careers, but you're going to be working with people who are early in their careers, the advice on internship, networking, thinking about getting engaged, applying that information, and then even throughout your career going forward is very, very helpful. So thanks, guys, for providing input there.
That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.